Hi, I'm Teal, and this is the news. No, not really, but this is the moon. And this is a tribute. And if you are any kind of a fan, you'll probably already know who it's a tribute to. But I'll just try to let the poetry speak for itself and do the big reveal at the end of the poem. I really wanted the moon to be my companion. I'm in a constant battle with my phone's memory, so I'll get into it. Memory, the first word of the poem. Anyway, this one is called A Smile You File. Allow me to start again. I'm Teal, and this is the news. No, we'll skip all that. A smile you file in your memory banks forever and give thanks for. Memories cease to adhere to chronology as the number of years gets away from me, but I suppose this must have been about 11 Earth rotations back. That fact alone is a lot to unpack. My stressors and unknowns felt stacked in a vacuum of pressure all around me. Every time I thought I had a firm grasp on anything, a lot of confusion and uncertainty came hot on its tails to confound me. Looking back now, I think, what were you so worked up about? At least you were still in your 20s. But you couldn't have told me that back then. Even an appearance from future me wouldn't have created any confidence in my ability to fend off energy leeches, let alone see some actual success or momentum, as I felt dumbstruck constantly, and as though I was always in the reaches of some criticism, rejection, or condescension that left me speechless. I should mention the setting was me heading back to LA, where everyone I opened up to seemed to lie to my face or prey on my weakness. But that silver screen, albeit tarnished, was still my deepest wish. I was a fish flopping on the concrete, nowhere near the relief of water there. But at this point in the story, that disappointment and despair wasn't a brutal truth I was aware of yet. I had hedged my bets and fallen with no net several times already, but I steadied myself in Colorado and got on with the show, still believing my role was just waiting to be featured in a spotlight glow. Hard to know what awaits, however, when you're still just waiting at the gate. I scanned the crowd at the terminal as I always do, contemplating my big move, but also playing a game with myself to prove my intuition by guessing who I would be sat next to on the plane. As my brain absorbed the characters, feeling particularly unsure about what was waiting for me in the city of angels, dreams, demons, and extremes, someone's eyes caught mine like a pair of high beams. Someone whose brilliance with comedic scenes meant so much to me and shaped my very understanding of comedy. I calmly hid my reaction because everyone else, even pre cell phones, was thoroughly wrapped up in one distraction or another. I tried to cover up my excited expression as well as I could and moved slowly over to this man until I stood directly in front of him and he looked up at me. I spoke slowly and purposefully, asking, "Might I have this coveted seat?" He smiled mischievously. "Oh, you think this is a good one, huh? By me? Well, that's sweet. Sure," he said invitingly. "Join the party." I was barely able to contain my insane giddiness. His voice had that distinctive grittiness, like it had been through some gravel. "You seem like a very kind type," he told me, sh- uh, shocking me by starting the conversation. "What's a kind gal like you want to travel to LA for?" I laughed, beaming at his attention. "I'm sure you could guess," I responded. "Ah, yes," he nodded. "The acting drug. Didn't anybody tell you it's dangerous?" He acted like a person and not at all like someone famous. "Yeah," I admitted. "Only every person I know." "Right," he nodded thoughtfully. "But if you don't get a little broken, you never know, right? Or if you don't get a little broken, you never grow, right? You never know or grow." "Right." I shined my light at him. That lovely 20 something light that hadn't yet been dimmed. He skimmed the pages of a magazine for a minute or two before setting it down on the ground. This was bound to get interesting. I felt like confessing what a huge fan I was, but I played it cool and hid the electric buzz shaking my kneecaps. "Anybody ever tell you Hollywood is a trap?" he asked. "Or, wait," he scanned my whole face. "You've been there a few times already. You know." I tried not to show how nervous I was. I just nodded, wanting him to maintain the reins of the conversation, even though I could hardly contain how many questions I wanted to ask. They let you bask in the honey-colored light, all right, he reflected, but then they make you fight for it. You know that already, too. You're smart. You still got your heart in there, too, huh? He asked, pointing at my chest. Yes, I smiled. I wouldn't let him fucking take it for nothing. He chuckled, amused by my sailor mouth. Good for you. He approved of me, and it made me so happy. Good for you, he repeated, seeming a bit sad. I tried to make the very most of the time I had with him. Going to Hollywood the first time was like swimming naked with starving sharks in the dark, I said. His face told me he enjoyed my conversation and admiration of him. And somehow you came back to the Rocky Mountains and decided to go back and dive on in again, right? Yeah, I laughed. I guess the sharks didn't put up an intimidating enough fight the first time. That or I'm just out of my mind. Or both, I don't know. We'll find out. Colorado girl, he said, reviewing some memory in his mind he wouldn't let me in on. You smoke pot? He asked boldly. Of course, I reported. You got a bong? He was amused by my jokes. I can't tell you how much hope that filled me with. I guess I'm just promoting that Rocky Mountain High cliche. I put my hands up as if to say, you caught me. Hey, he said, we all gotta get through this thing somehow, right? I was still pinching myself that I was on the same flight as one of my comedic heroes from the comedy show of all comedy shows. He froze all of a sudden, as though someone hit the pause button. You okay? I asked. Then he started moving fast, unzipping all his bags. Don't that beat all, he said. I think I may have left something at the hotel. He sighed. Oh well, maybe my assistant has it. Shit. Onward, right? Always more stuff to keep track of. I wanted to ask why he was there in Colorado and what he did to prepare for big audiences and how it was that his sentences sounded so different from anyone else's. But it was easier to just act like I knew everything and we were old friends. I just felt it. That was the right move because he didn't think I was trying to prove anything to him or get anything out of him. Celebrities always have to wonder which of their interactions are genuine. I told him about my agent instructing me to get breast implants at age 17. Wow, he chuckled cynically. Tinseltown is as mean as ever. Try to get you into the body shop and chop up your true self. For what? A magazine cover? Little wealth? Yeah, I commiserated. Occupational health hazards. Yup. He finished that famous... He flashed that famous sideways grin. Until you get to be my age, and then you gotta watch out for the buzzards. I laughed. I wanted to tell him that I still hadn't recovered from what my agent did to me, but he could see the story on my face. I was attracted to him, like a beacon. He could tell by the way I leaned in. But unlike many men in Hollywood I'd come up against, he was hesitant to be anything but a total gentleman with me. Respectful, admirable, protective, really. I always wonder what would have happened if his assistant hadn't swooped into the scene. To a certain degree, I guess the outcome may have been the same, but I'm not sure, because fame always comes with more complexity than simplicity. To this day, I think, maybe if he'd been alone, he would have let me see a little deeper into his world, but the assistant came up and swirled the energy into a totally different dynamic. I sort of panicked as I watched him slip back into celebrity travel protocol. He didn't put up a wall, he just shifted, that's all. The assistant looked at me, and then looked at him, checking in, without words, to make sure I wasn't bothering him. He responded, even though the assistant didn't say anything directly. She's a good egg, he said assuringly, but the assistant still seemed to inspect me, carefully. My new friend brushed off his protector's suspicions with his hand, reaffirming. Come on, man, he insisted. Really, she's good. We've been having a great little repartee. I still remember the exact way he said that word, breaking it up into 3 distinct syllables, repartee. His distinct voice pulled me in. As is often the case with trying to pin down a moment, it changed quickly, too quick for me to stick with a moment I wanted to stay in longer. Time and momentum are stronger than will and intentions. Not to mention it was a packed flight, and it was impossible to fight the structure around us. We settled into the flying bus as everyone aboard seemed to be agitated or fussing about something petty. I just kept smiling. I sat with him for 30 minutes or more, and he let me. I was uncomfortable and sweaty then in my seat, but my discomfort couldn't compete with the high of meeting someone I so admired. I was very tired, but I tried hard not to let myself doze, in the event that he'd come down the rows seeking to know more about me. I knew it was probably more fantasy than reality, but I felt that he could be a pal to me. No no one had ways to access each other instantly back then. There were no Facebook friends or DMs to slide into. It was up to you as a real human to connect before everyone was turned into some internet alter ego. I've always been terrified to fly, and as the slow ascent began, I couldn't hide my fears, scanning the cabin for anything to focus on. I found his eyes, and he smiled so wide over the rows of seats. That helped to defeat some of my spiraling anxiety. We were up in the air when suddenly I felt a presence beside me. I hoped it was him, but it was his assistant. He bent down, whispering, but not quietly. "Hey, couldn't help but see you do not find the skies friendly," he said. "Would you like to calm the noise in your head?" He held out a pill. I was still pretty innocent and asked, "What is it?" "Oh, just a little Klonopin," he said casually. "It'd help you settle in." It sounded scarier to me than it was in actuality, but I said no thank you, and he went back to his seat. I looked back to find the kind eyes of my surprised celebrity connection, and he was fast asleep, his head bobbing in various directions. He likely took one of the pills. I don't know. It didn't bother me. I knew he was likely full to the gills with expectations and itineraries. It sounded too scary for me to want to take one, but the only reason I was sad he'd taken it, or maybe he didn't, is because it meant we were done talking. He was out. Suddenly, the squawking of rich women and the squeal of the engine was hard to deal with. I wanted to cry and throw my own little fit that I couldn't just sit with this awesome character all the way back to LA. Like all great things, the high of it would fade, but I still feel lucky it's saved in my memory bank. I did get the chance to thank him once the plane landed. We ended up stranded on the tarmac for a while, arriving in style. We piled out of the plane as people complained about the delay. We ended up right next to each other at the baggage claim. "Hey, it's Sleeping Beauty," I teased him. He laughed in that totally one-of-a-kind way. "Yeah," he replied. "What can I say? I hate to fly." "Me too," I said, so happy to see that sparkle in his eyes one more time. "You gonna be okay out here?" he asked me so sincerely. I wanted to say, "No, steer me in the right direction. Take on the deflection of all the assholes I have to face. Help me in this psycho fat rat race. Let me stay at your place. Help me make it here. Don't release me to the fake frauds and God knows what else. Help me." But I hid my fear entirely and said, "Sure I will. Just look at me. You think anybody's gonna mess with this?" I made fists and flexed my non-existent muscles. He laughed. Just then the assistant barged in again with his perpetual hustle energy. "Come on, we gotta get," he fired off rapidly. "Okay," he shrugged. "So it goes," he said apologetically. "You take care, okay?" He put both hands on my shoulders lovingly. "I will," I said, so sad to see him go. "There's a bunch of weasels around here. Hold on to yourself, dear," he said. Yes, I nodded. "I know." "You know more than you think," he told me, winking at me. "Don't let 'em make you feel like they know more than you. They don't. Hear me?" My eyes got misty. Thank you," I stammered, as the whole airport clanged and clamored with busy people high on their own importance. He was different. He was more. "Cars waiting," the assistant we'd been ignoring interjected again. I took his hand. It felt like the hand of an old friend. "Thank you," I said again, more articulately. I hugged him. He let me. "Goodbye, sweetheart," he waved endearingly as he walked. The people made a clearing, recognizing him, some of them trying to swarm. As he vanished from my sight, I yelled, "Goodbye, Norm!" "Thank you," I said. "Thank you," again, softly, though he was long gone, off on the beat in the punishing LA heat. A true original I was lucky enough to meet. It was several minutes or more before I moved my feet. So yeah, that's one of those celebrities that people may think, well, you didn't know him. How can you be so sad? But I really am sad. I'm sad that he's gone. I just had that little moment with him, and I wish that it had been longer. Or that I was brave enough to ask for his phone number or whatever kept it going. But I had that little moment, and I hesitated to include the part about the pill because I don't know if he actually took the pill or if his assistant just offered to me and he was just sleeping. I don't know. I don't care. I don't have any judgment about that at all. It was just kind of a dramatic part of the story because when the assistant came up to me, I was so excited and I thought it was him. And it was like, yeah, you want to talk more, Norm? Let's talk about everything. Let's talk about everything. But it wasn't him. And we had our one last little moment by the baggage claim. But yeah, just like the importance, the whole story, the truth of the story is important because that's what the story is. That's what really happened. And it adds that little bit of drama, but I have it doesn't matter. That part of it doesn't matter. It was a part of it. So it's in my heart and it's there, and the whole story was fascinating and so LA. I don't know what else to say. I'm sad. I'm sad. I miss you, Norm. I really. He was a good one. Like, he called me a good egg. And he was a good egg. So I hope the next leg of the journey is good to you, friend. Sad. He met his end much too soon. But sending a kiss to the moon for you, Norm. Goodbye, Norm. Thank you.